Okay, we're back. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see us again. We restarted the stream, so we should be back. Okay, restarted stream.
Let's see if my phone says we're on or not. It says we are live now,
Yeah.
but it still says that silly thing with the countdown. That was another one.
Yeah, that's us. I'm connected to you now.
Okay.
Okay, good. Good sound and picture. All right.
Awesome.
That sounds good.
I'm gonna plug
Hopefully-
in my phone.
Hopefully it's not going to give us problems.
All right, let's do this again.
Round 2, start over.
Hello, everybody.
We are back. Okay. Hopefully we don't have any more stream problems. We are now in pretty much the further southern part of Albania. Let's see. There's some chats. Oh, lost the feed again. Is it us? Did we lose the feed? Lost the feed again.
Maybe we didn't. Maybe it was somebody
No.
else.
Is it us?
Let's see.
Hopefully it's not us. Can everybody else?
It's working
Okay,
fine.
it's working fine. Terry says it's working fine. Holly is in North Lake Tahoe. Where in Lake Tahoe are you?
We didn't introduce ourselves.
Oh yeah. Well, there's been some difficulties. Let's just say that. Okay, we're back, and hopefully it stays like this for the duration of the live stream. So as you can see, that we have a slightly different setup, and this setup could be responsible for all the problems that we're having. I don't know. I'm also recording on this audio recorder and Marlene's microphone, but you guys are actually hearing from the camera's microphone, so I don't know how this is going to work. If I try to sync it up, maybe I'll do this.
You almost hit me.
This way I'll sync it up later, if I replace the audio for whatever reason. But anyways, yeah, so like we said earlier, we're going to talk about how it is to travel in a foreign country. I don't know how many of you have traveled in your RV, camper van, overland vehicle, whatever, in a foreign country. Canada, Mexico, a lot of people have, from the U.S. have done that. And a lot of the same things that we learned while we were there applies to the things that we've done here. So I think a few people have asked, just various information about, like, how do you get internet? How do you, do you use your credit card, or do you, are there RV services and stuff like that? So what we want to sort of talk about in this live stream and also the podcast is all the little things that we do. So we've not officially started the podcast yet. We're just kind of getting ready for the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
When we start the podcast, we'll go through like all the different items that we've talked about. And with all the difficulties that we've had with the live stream, I can see you guys' chat and I can see all this stuff that's happening. So if you guys can just keep those questions coming as we go. There's going to be probably like a minute or 2 minutes of delay just based on our connection and the location that we are. We will look at your questions as we go through like the items that we want to talk about, and then we can go from there.
And if you have any off-topic questions before or after our podcast, we'll be glad to answer them.
Yeah, so do you want to, we can just, I don't know how many people are on because I can't see this on my end.
Over here.
Let me see. I should.
Sharon, you're trying to call me on Instagram video right now. I'm sorry, I'm declining you.
We gotta keep this
Hold on, I'm trying to
live stream going the best that we can. Okay.
What was it?
Oh, here we go. We have 8 people watching. Okay, so I'm just going to assume that there's going to be few technical difficulties based on our connection, but we will march forward. We will just go forward with all this because at the end of the day, we're going to record this as a podcast too. So if anything is missed, you guys can kind of watch this back and hopefully it gets recorded properly to YouTube. If not, you guys can always go to our podcast, which is mollymish.com/podcast, and this is episode 10. So you guys will see sort of how we record a podcast, really. We have this microphone here on my end. This is actually the recorder that everything gets recorded in. And then Marlene has a microphone that she speaks into that also gets recorded into here. And it gets all synchronized and synced up. And then I take the recording from here. I go to the computer and I edit it, make sure it's not too much noise, background noise. And I think there's going to be a lot of background noise in this particular one because of this computer fan that's on. But, this is all an experiment. We may or may not do a live stream podcast combo thing again. But, what we've thought about this in the past was like the podcast was a really good way for us to do like a long form. And the long form is a really good opportunity for us to get, bless you, really detail into specific subject matters. People that want to know a lot, they don't just want to watch like a 10-minute YouTube video on something that's edited. They want to, and also we want to be able to like answer questions. And I think this is the way to do it. And Coco is on too. Hi, Coco.
Hi, Coco.
Good morning. I'm assuming it's morning for you there. So let's go. Let's start doing the podcast portion. Right?
Okay.
The kids are quiet.
They're very quiet.
Yeah.
Make sure they're still there.
They're still alive. Okay, so podcast. This is all pre-podcast, and then at some point I'm gonna look. We're 21 minutes in, so let's just go 3, 2, 1, episode 10, right?
Right.
Okay. Welcome to our 10th episode of the Molly Mish podcast. We are here in southern Albania. We're only about 20 miles from the border between Albania and Greece. We're in our van. This is actually the first podcast we've done in the van. Right? Because when we're in Split, when we're in Croatia, we didn't do it in the van.
Right. We did.
And I think we did
the dining rooms.
We did an episode from Montenegro. And we did the Montenegro episode in an Airbnb while we were there.
Mm-hmm. We needed showers.
Yep. And that's one of the things that we do when we're traveling through these countries that don't really have good RV infrastructure. You need showers, you need laundry. And if you don't have RV infrastructure and it's cold and
things are closed,
like overcast, even if you can wash stuff by hand, it's never going to dry. So, but we're still tweaking the setup. We're also doing a live stream on YouTube. For those of you that are on live stream, I see Big Duke X, Terry S, Sharon Corley, of course, and Coco. They're all on live stream now. We have about 10 people on live stream, and this is the first time doing a podcast live streamed combo. So let's hope things go well.
We should probably introduce ourselves for any new listeners.
Oh yeah, if you're new to the podcast or new to our YouTube channel, we're Molly Mish, and it's a Croatian word. It means little mouse, but unfortunately in Albania, that means little meat. Meat as in beef or pork.
Yeah. Welcome to the Little Meat Podcast.
It's a little unfortunate, but at the same time, I think it adds a bit of stealth to our van because it says Molly Mish on the side.
Yeah, we could totally be just a business
and we're just
van.
like a meat delivery van in Albania. So, Right now, we're in the parking lot of a hotel, and we got to this town. This town is called Saranda, and it's on the Ionian coast of Albania. There's only a short stretch of Ionian coast. It's really interesting where we're across like the heel of Italy, and from the heel north is the Adriatic Sea, and from the heel south is the Ionian Sea. So we're in the Ionian coast, and this is the first time on our way driving here was the first time that we saw the Ionian coast or the Ionian Sea.
Right.
And everything south of here is the Ionian Sea and it opens up to the Mediterranean Sea. We have not been to the Ionian Sea, and we've not actually been to Albania. This is our first time here, so we haven't done any YouTube videos yet of Albania, which is coming soon. I've got a few that are ready to go. We've got to queue those up and get them edited and uploaded. But
And we'll do a separate podcast on our feelings and our experience in Albania specifically, but this is not the one.
Yeah, like episode 9, which is all about Montenegro. We decided after we leave every country, we'll kind of round out all the experiences that we've had about each country and all the things that we've learned and liked and disliked about every country. But since we're here until tomorrow, something may happen tomorrow. Hopefully nothing bad, but maybe more awesome things will happen tomorrow that we'll want to include in that episode. So that'll be another episode. So this one is actually going to be about what it's like to travel in an RV in a foreign country. So let's jump right in. We have some stuff that's outlined and we want to share with you. So we'll go right into the first item. So the first item is, well, like, what do you call what we do, right? So right now there's just a whole bunch of fads that are going on right now with the traveling world when you travel by land. Like traditionally, this is called RVing. We're in an RV, but we converted this van ourselves. So technically, we didn't buy an RV. We bought a cargo van, but we started out in a camper. In the U.S., would be called RV. But is this like we're in a 4-wheel drive and we're driving over land, and some of these roads are not paved, and we're exploring. Another real popular thing that people throw around is overlanding. Like, is this overlanding? Or are we like van lifing, which is another. All of these phrases are just words that I'm like, I cringe when I hear them. I cringe when I hear people like really, really like, glean like. They attach themselves to these terminologies. Like I'm a van lifer or I'm an overlander. But for us,
we say we're living on the road.
Yeah, even when we're in an Airstream, like we never called ourselves really, like we didn't like proudly announce that we're Airstreamers.
But our name on Instagram was MollyMish_AirstreamDan.
It is because
somebody took our name.
Some woman somewhere in the world has Molly Mish on Instagram, and I've messaged her at least 2 or 3 times. She won't respond. She doesn't really post her account, and she won't give it to us. So, that's what we had to do. But that being said, what we're doing is we're just traveling. Like we're traveling by vehicle. So that brings its own unique set of challenges. Right, so after doing it for so many years in the United States, it's been very easy for us. We know exactly what to do. We have all the Walmarts, we have all the Cracker Barrels, we have all these different things, truck stops and showers and all this other stuff. And when we had the Airstream, we have a built-in shower. We can just fill up water. We go to the campground to dump our gray and black water, fill up water. We know the water is safe. It's the same currency. It's all this like really easy stuff that you just get really comfortable with, and this stops becoming a challenge, and it's not necessarily that we're looking for a challenge. It's just you lose a little bit of the excitement.
Right.
So, that's why we decided to downsize after Alaska, which in Alaska we got we got sort of refreshed in the type of things that we're doing. Like, we want to do more of this.
Yeah, it was another bug that bit us.
Yeah, we want to sort of go deeper and farther and more remote, or more places that are unknown. So we decided to do that, and then some of you guys know that shortly after that came Mexico. After Mexico, we went to more remote places in Canada, which was Newfoundland, Labrador, Nova Scotia, like Atlantic coast. We drove, on roads that are sort of hard to find, and places that are harder to get to. But now we're in like southeastern Europe, which we have not seen really another RV, camper van, overlanding rig in a campground for weeks.
We've only been to 2 campgrounds though, but we did see like a VW traveling couple from Germany yesterday. We got excited.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like when you see somebody that's kind of doing what you're doing, and when you haven't seen somebody like that for a long time,
It's kind of like when we
get excited.
started traveling as a family. Like, we didn't see that many Airstreams on the road, so we got super excited. I used to wave the Airstreams.
Right.
And after a while,
when there are too many Airstreams, and then there's so many that they don't care about you. They're not excited to see you. They don't wave back. Then you just kind of give up. So yeah, like, what do we call this? We don't really call it anything. You can call it whatever you want, I guess. We call it just us exploring. For an adventure. So,
is that your hashtag rant? Is your hashtag rant over now?
my I don't know. Like, you could get so many followers if you just play the game, but I have a hard time with that. But anyways, let's go on to the second
Number 2
part. Let's see where we've been and how this information applies. So in this podcast, we're going to talk about, like I said earlier, traveling in a foreign country with your own vehicle. We've been obviously all across the U.S. So, like I said earlier, it's really easy to kind of just go from state to state, and there's really not too, like, compared to parts of Europe that we've been, the different states in the United States are not that different. Even though it feels different the first time that we were, like, if you compare, like the South to the Pacific Northwest, like, there's a lot of differences. Geographically, there's a lot of differences in people's accents, the way people talk. But at the end of the day, it's like everybody speaks English. We don't have any trouble understanding people. Use the same currency. Your bank has ATMs.
There's Targets everywhere.
There's Targets. There's Walmarts. There's Taco Bells. There's McDonald's. There's all this real familiar stuff. So, this is like...
everything's convenient.
Very convenient.
Very.
Yeah.
Compared to what right now.
So, traveling in foreign countries, the difference is that there are challenges you have to overcome. And I think this applies to our experience. We carried a lot of the experiences and the things that we learned in Mexico and here. In fact, where we are right now in Albania, it feels very, very like has a real Mexico vibe.
It does.
I don't know if I expected that. I was thinking like Morocco, which will be sometime in 2020. I felt like Morocco was going to be like the Baja of Europe. And I've talked to a lot of European travelers too, and they're like, oh yeah, that is kind of the Baja of Europe. And that might be true, but I get a real Mexico vibe from Albania, which, I
think more mainland.
In all the best, ways possible. So I think where we've been in parts of, real briefly in Western Europe, and then we'll go back to Western Europe, and I think things will be a lot easier in Western Europe. Roads are better. We've driven through Montenegro, which doesn't have a highway system whatsoever. Albania has some. We drove like maybe through 30 miles of a highway the 3 weeks that we've been here. But, we drove through some roads that, yeah, you literally have to slow down for sheep. So that's what I mean with the real Mexican vibe. And it's cheap. People are friendly. People are willing to help. And, there are like the rules are not set in stone. You can say, yeah, you're not supposed to take pictures at this place, but sure, take some pictures. So, so this is what I mean. Like, I think that this information that we're providing in this podcast episode applies whether you're traveling Mexico or whether you're traveling in Canada, whether you're traveling in Nova Scotia or if you're traveling in Southeast Europe. Um, so yeah, let's go on to the next item, which I believe the way that I try to structure this podcast is I'm trying to I'm trying to structure it so that like you can kind of follow this. You get information on the things that you need as you need them. So the next step is there's 12 topics that we'll talk about. Three is things to consider when you cross a border. And I think Marlene, you take advantage, or I mean not advantage. You sort of take control of a lot of this kind of border documentation stuff. Like,
So, yeah, when we get there, we tell the kids to put their phones down. That's what they do on their drives. On driving days, they have their phones. They know that, put their phones down. And the big thing is have your documents ready, hand it over, and just be friendly. Don't have an attitude. Take off your sunglasses, turn off your car. Kids are smiling. Everybody's here, crossing borders, and we're here to explore and experience a new country.
Yeah, the thing about borders is like when you, especially if you've been at the country that you are currently in and you're about to cross into a new one, if you've been there for a little while, you're probably pretty comfortable by then. And you're about to go into another one. And most of European countries, if it's part of the EU, most of the EU countries have no borders anymore. But that hasn't been the case for us. We crossed into Croatia, and there was a border between Slovenia and Croatia, and that was the first border, all the way from the Atlantic coast of Belgium all the way to Croatia. There were no borders. But in Croatia, we crossed the border. We didn't feel any uneasiness in Croatia because we've been to Croatia a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
But every border after that, there was a border in Montenegro, and there was a border. Have we gone through Bosnia, there would have been a border in Bosnia, but instead we went around. There's a border in Albania. In every country that you go, if it's one that you haven't been to, there's a bit of uneasy feeling, like not knowing what to expect. So, the thing about once you get into a country is that uneasy feeling. Somebody asked on Instagram the other day is like, like they said, I don't mean to, say that Albania is dangerous, but how do you feel about traveling these countries that might be dangerous? But what came to my mind is like when we crossed into Montenegro, we'd never been there, but we first stopped at a market to figure out whether or not we can get a SIM card, and we started interacting with locals, and every interaction that we have with a local helps to ease that transition. And the more you learn about that country, the more comfortable you are. Now we've been in Albania for 3 weeks. Tomorrow, we're leaving tomorrow. I feel completely comfortable with Albania. In fact, now next time we come back through Albania, I'll know exactly what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of stuff. You want to be polite, you want to be cooperative, you don't want to be the quote unquote ugly American, right? The nice thing about Europe is all the countries that you travel across. There's so many different countries that speak so many different languages. It's all everybody's common like traveling language is English.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, people that we talk to, they probably don't even know that we're from the United States unless we make ourselves really known like we're from the U.S. A lot of people ask us, "Oh, where are you from? Are you from, the United Kingdom?" We're like, "No, we're from California."
I just think it's so funny when people ask me that.
Yeah, because we don't have a British accent, but when you don't speak English as you don't speak English fluently, you can't tell accents. Just like when you go to South America, Central America, the locals can tell, oh, that guy's from Guatemala, or that guy's from Colombia, or that guy's from Venezuela, or Argentina, because there's regional accents. But they can't really tell our regional accents from the U.S. or from the U.K. So they're very used to people traveling from all over Europe to places like this, and they don't really they don't really think twice about speaking English to us. So that's been really good.
Let's switch to number 4.
So then you kind of want to blend in. No, we're still
No, we're still
number
crossing
3.
borders.
We just kind of got we jumped into number 4 a little bit,
We
but
made an outline, guys.
we made an outline. I spent all afternoon making an outline. So when you cross border, also the other important thing, we're still at number 3, which is things to do when crossing borders. Know where you're going, because chances are what's happening if you're traveling from one country to another in the EU. They have an agreement with roaming where you can kind of roam freely with your cell phone. So that's less of a problem. But when you travel from a non-EU country to a non-EU country, or any country to a non-EU country, chances are you're not going to be able to have cell service when you get across. So it's important to kind of set yourself up so that you know where you're going. Make sure your GPS is good. Make sure you got, your directions ready. Make sure you can cross and just have a destination and it's ready to go. So that's important to know, because chances are if you don't have that, you can enter into a country and then just be lost and go down the wrong path for God knows how long. So that's kind of the obvious stuff. But the things that are not quite as obvious, you have all your documents for crossing borders, but make sure you keep copies of all your documents too. Just in case something happens to your documents, you can at least show copies, or at least have copies ready.
Just take a photo of it
to kind of get you to the next spot where you can get it replaced. Right. So those documents meaning are like passports, driver's license, insurance cards, registration.
I don't think we've done that, so maybe tonight we should.
Well, we have copies of our well, we did for Mexico anyways. We were much more prepared when we went to Mexico.
We were more nervous.
Yeah, then we were here. We're a little bit more lax now, which maybe it's not great. You want to be somewhat vigilant about keeping track of this stuff. So anyways, have copies of your documents so that in case something gets lost or whatever, you can find yourself back in. And also research your visa restrictions, and how long you can stay. In Europe, the big thing about Europe is like, as a U.S. citizen, you can just fly into Europe and you can vacation here for months without worrying about how long you can stay. But if you're going to be here as long as we are, then you have to be a little bit more careful about how long you stay in each place. Because Europe, the EU, and it's tricky. It's not just the EU. It's also this thing called the Schengen zone. Not all EU countries are part of the Schengen, and not all Schengen countries are part of the EU.
Yeah.
So it gets really tricky. So the bottom line is research that. How long your visa, if you have to have a visa, then it's probably going to tell you when you apply how long you can stay. But if you're traveling to a place where you don't need a visa, then know like what your passport allows you to do while you're there. So that's definitely something that you want to think about if you're staying a long time in a particular country or region. And then research what is allowed into the country. So since we're driving our own vehicle in and out of countries, you gotta really be careful. I mean, you want to research well ahead of time. For us anyways, it's like before we packed the van to ship it to Europe, we had to make sure that we're not packing anything that's illegal here. So even for Canada and Mexico, if you've been traveling across the United States and you have like a shotgun in the back of your RV for protection, and then you're up in Montana and you're like, hey, let's go to Banff. And you cross the border without thinking twice. They didn't check your vehicle, but boom, suddenly you just committed a felony. You brought a firearm without declaring into Canada.
Or even mace.
Or mace. Or yeah.
It's just
you can bring bear spray, but you can't bring anything that's meant for humans, which is weird. But yeah, so that point is to tell you guys to be careful what you bring into the country and what's allowed. and or even things like fruits and vegetables. You know, if you get searched and they find a firearm that you didn't declare, that would be bad news, and it could be a major amount of delay. It could mean that they could throw you in jail. So you want to avoid all that.
Like a couple of things that were surprised in Europe is some countries outlaw drones. Period. No drones allowed at all.
Yep.
And no, what is that camera called when we drive?
Dash cams.
Dash cams.
Yeah,
are illegal
some
in some
countries don't allow dash cams, which you would think it's kind of a weird thing to ban, and it must be like unknown strange countries, but no, like countries like Austria, not allowed to have dash cams.
And we drove through.
So
with the
yeah,
dash cam. Sorry, Austria.
well, you didn't have to tell them.
The country's on this.
And also, the next thing is like how much cash can you bring? When you fly from one country to another, it's very clear. They give you the form to declare whatever you brought and things that you have. It's important to declare. Usually, it's like $10,000 or something. You are basically on your own to figure all this stuff out when you drive.
No forms.
There are no forms. You just show up at the border and then you hand them your passport. And if you have to like, if they see something suspicious and they want to search you and they find stuff you're not supposed to bring, especially cash, then suddenly you're viewed as a criminal. So be careful with that. And also, we'll go into this a little bit about bringing cash, which is like we like to use cash as a form of like, currency to buy and pay for things, just because it's a lot easier and also it can be cheaper, if you're paying for local currency. And then when you travel through the EU, most countries use the euro, but Montenegro, not in the EU, uses the euro. Mm-hmm. Croatia in the EU uses kuna, and Albania, not EU, uses lex. So there's some planning involved. You have to make sure that you're not bringing more cash than you're allowed, but also by the time you get into that country, you want to have access to your cash. If you're like us, most of the places we've been to in Albania doesn't take credit cards. Mm. So you have to have a way to access your cash. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. So let's move on to the next one, which is 4. Getting past the language barrier. A lot of people ask us about the language barrier, which is legitimate. We've not had to deal with the language barrier too much until Albania, to tell you the truth. But of course, we had to deal with that in Mexico. So we knew we were spending a lot of time in Mexico. And Mexico was something that we've always wanted to do. And also, like, we always wanted to use that as an opportunity to get much better at Spanish. So what we did is we learned as much as we could. And we took we took language lessons while we were there. And we used this app called Duolingo, which a lot of you guys probably know. And it's a great way to get your basics down and sort of, get good at just how to kind of greet people and how to ask for basic things. It makes sense to do something like that and even get a little bit more advanced in the language aspect if you are going to be in that country for a long time. In Croatia and Montenegro, we didn't really have to deal with that because Marlene's parents are Croatian, and they pretty much speak the same language in both of those countries, even though it's called Montenegrin in Montenegro, but it's practically the same thing as Croatian.
Yeah, just a few vocabulary words. I got to know how to say carrot. I'm like, we were at the grocery store. I'm like, I don't know which one of these signs says carrot. They're not using mirkva.
Right, and bread.
And
bread is different.
Bread was different. Like,
So small things like that. But Albanian is a whole different thing. Albanian is, if you look at the branch of language trees in Europe, Albania is in its own branch by itself.
Yeah, there's no words we can pick up.
Yeah, I mean, there's some words. I mean, police is police.
Yeah.
A lot of the words that you recognize are like borrowed phrases, but the base of the language is its own thing. It's not like Greek. They're next to Greek. It's not like Montenegrin, Croatian, Serbian. It's not like Italian, which is right across, the Ionian Sea. It's not like anything. That we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about our experience in Albania. But you know, learning the basics, like just being here for 3 weeks, like we just learned how to say thank you. And the nice thing is that most people that are in businesses speak enough English because they get enough tourists from all over Europe, and the common language that they all learn is English, and they speak enough English to sort of run their business. So if you go to a store and you're like, they can tell you how much things are in English, but if you try to go beyond like what they know about their business, you're gonna lose them. But again, you know, just like what I said in the previous one about crossing the border, be courteous, be polite, ask them if they speak English. If you can sort of learn that phrase, like, do you speak English in their language, it's going to go a long ways for you, because a lot of people will be like, yeah, maybe a little bit. But even if it doesn't work out, you can figure out a lot of stuff just by using hand gestures. And don't do the thing where you're like speaking louder and slower, but not changing the words, or adding more information into what you're asking. That's not going to help. So, using hand gestures, sign language, that can definitely help.
Well, somebody commented they don't want to travel in Europe because they don't speak another language. That should not stop
No,
you. Or any
definitely
country.
not.
That should not stop you.
Definitely not. Yeah, so tone and gesture can go a long ways when you don't. But all else fails, you have your phone. Install Google Translate or some other translation app of your choice. Google Translate is great. There's tons of languages in there. There's been several situations where I'm talking to somebody and they know enough to kind of get by the basics about their business, but when we need to go ask a little bit more, pop out Google Translate, type in what you're writing, and then they'll translate it for them, and they'll write what they want to tell you, and then you can go back and forth. This is also another way for you to pick up some words. So Google Translate is really great. The tip is to download the offline language pack in Google Translate before you go into a new country, because again, you may not have internet. So yeah, so that's getting past the language barrier. And let's see, let's go on to 5, which is getting driving directions. This one's quick. This one's easy. A lot of people use apps on their phone, which is perfect. And Google Maps now can let you download regional maps offline, and you can just get that and get your directions. But I always use a traditional GPS as well, just because I know that Google Maps will fail me. And also, the old adage is two is one is none, right? Because if you only have one of something and that breaks, you're done. So basically, have a backup. So I have a traditional GPS, a Garmin, basically. So I rely on that, and also I cross-reference. I cross-reference what directions that tells me versus what Google Maps tells me. So Google Maps have often, I'm sure some of you guys have experienced this, often led people astray. Go down the wrong path. But also Google Maps will do just the opposite as well. It will give you recommendations of the preferred route when the road that looks great on a map, looks like a highway, is actually a rutted out dirt road, which is the case getting here from the last town we were at. So yeah, have a backup. So download your maps offline, check your recommended routes, make sure you're going down the right route. Also, it wouldn't hurt to have a paper map. Definitely wouldn't hurt to have a paper map. Yeah, Sharon says on the chat here, prefer paper maps. Absolutely keep some paper maps. We don't have any paper maps for Europe just because we don't really know exactly where to get them, first of all.
We tried to go to
updated
AAA,
ones.
and they're like, "Here's all of Europe." I'm like, "This is not
Yeah,
helpful."
it's like giving us a globe. You know, you just have the countries. Um, yeah, so paper maps, if you can get them, definitely helpful. You know, for Canada and Mexico, there's no reason to not have paper maps as a backup. Um, you know, going back to what I was saying about knowing what routes that you should take. If you want to take a certain route and then Google Maps is recommending to go the long way, there's a reason for that. Do some research. So in this particular case, we did research just Googling outside of maps, regular Google search, or whatever search engine of your choice. You'll probably come across people's blogs or just forums, people's experiences, and they'll tell you, I went down that road, and this is the reason why. And there may even be pictures of why you shouldn't do it. And you can cross reference when they were there, and then ask the locals, what's that road like? Before we left our last city, Barat, I wanted to go the short way, and I asked the lady, hey, what's that road like? She spoke much better English than I'll ever speak Albanian. But she said, don't go there.
Especially an off season when it's been raining and the roads can be washed out.
Yeah,
You just have to consider your seasons too.
Yeah, so this road, after I did some research online, yeah, people say the scenery is gorgeous, but there are narrow dirt sections where you fall 300,000 feet to your death if you slip off. So we didn't do that.
They did, yeah.
So yeah, that's I said it was easy and short, but I don't know how long that took. Took a little bit of time to talk about driving directions, but most of the stuff is
You have a lot of words, Dan, in that mind of yours.
just use common sense. Okay. 6, driving in a foreign country. So this seems straightforward. Like, I can drive in my country, so why shouldn't I drive in a foreign country? A lot of foreign countries actually have strict rules about driving. In fact, like Croatia, for example, you have to go through a much more tedious process to get a driver's license than it does in the United States, it seems. But because we have a United States driver's license, the best thing to do is to go to AAA before you travel, and they will, for next to nothing, I want to say it's like 10 or 15 bucks or something.
Yeah, plus photo, so it costs a little bit more.
Okay, but you definitely should do it to get an international driver's license. It's good for 1 year, and you can renew it for another year. Online without having to go. I don't think. Somebody will have to go and pick it up, and they'll have to send it to you. That's what we'll have to do. But yeah, get an international driver's license. What's nice about that is now you're legal, and not only are you legal, if you come across like a corrupt cop who wants to, ask you for a bribe, or it hasn't happened to us yet, but it's just a matter of time. You hand that person your international driver's license. If they decide to not give it back to you, it's not permanent. It's not your actual driver's license,
right.
So obviously make copies of that too. So international driver's license, definitely. And also, like, depending on what kind of car you're driving, you may want to research like what kind of fuel is available. Europe is not a problem for us. We have a modern diesel Sprinter van. They have ultra low sulfur diesel everywhere. You can buy DEF everywhere, so it's not a problem. But Mexico is a different story. It's changing. I want to say in the last year and in the next couple of years, it's rapidly changing. There's going to be ultra low sulfur diesel, hopefully everywhere in the next couple of years. But when we were there a couple of years ago, we could not have taken this van down there, which is why we chose our gas truck. We had an F-250 6.2 liter V8 gas. And that was the vehicle that we had to take. And it had no problems everywhere. But research what kind of fuel. Maybe if you have a newer gas vehicle, make sure that they have high octane unleaded fuel for you. And also how far you can go on your tank of gas. Some places, when we drove through Labrador, there was a gas gap of probably, I want to say, 300 to 400 miles. Mm-hmm. And we carried an extra gas can. We didn't have to use it, but our friends Jason and Angela of Bodeswell, they had to use it because they're in an old Volkswagen bus and it got really bad gas mileage.
Well, I think because I had a crazy headwind too that
And with the
day.
headwind, they were getting even worse gas mileage. And yeah, without that extra 5 gallons of fuel, we would have had to tow them. And if we had to tow them, I don't know if we would have had enough gas. So research where you're going and if there is any fuel problems. And if right now in places in South America like Bolivia and Venezuela, there are some fuel shortages. And even in Mexico, we had some strikes that happened when we were in Oaxaca, and the strikes were blocking the roads, and they were not letting trucks in to refuel the gas stations. And had we left Oaxaca a day later, we would have been stuck there without fuel. So research that and see if you need to bring extra fuel. And paying for the fuel, this is we'll talk about this in the next section, which is see if they accept cash or credit card at the fuel pumps. For the most part, this is another reason why we prefer to use cash, because they'll always take cash. Oftentimes they won't take credit cards. And oftentimes credit cards will give you problems. They'll flag you if you haven't used it for a long time in a foreign country. They'll think, it's been cloned. So figure out how you're going to pay for the fuel at the fuel pumps. And also, know specific rules of the road in that foreign country. For the most part, it's all, the same. But Croatia, for example, has this different sign, has a different rule about a car. There's a sign that says, "Oh, come to an intersection. If there's this sign, you can drive forward and
Left
turn.
right?
You can turn left without stopping." So
oncoming traffic has to yield for a left turn.
yeah,
What is that going to
yeah,
happen?
you're going straight, and there's no, there's probably a sign for you, but if you see the sign, you have to know that there's no stop sign. If there's a car coming from this side road, you have to stop, even though there's no stop sign. Another interesting thing is that the red octagonal stop sign with the word STOP, that's universal. The only place I think we've seen it without the word stop in a stop sign is in Quebec. I think in Quebec even in France they say stop, but in Quebec they say stop in French because they're trying to preserve their language. So yeah, so that's something that you really want to be mindful of when you're traveling is know if there are any specific rules that you may or may not know. Obviously, do your research. And the next thing is, pretty obvious. Blend in as much as you can. Don't drive like a maniac. Don't speed. We try to go the speed limit, and sometimes that's too slow for the locals. So we may go just slightly faster. And a lot of the times you see what other people are doing and kind of do what they do. In the US, road rage is a real serious thing. People say, "Oh, I'm not going to let this guy pass me on a 2-lane road." But in all the other countries that we've been, if you're not going too fast and it's a 2-lane road, the person's going to pass. It's your courtesy to slow down and pull slightly off the side and let that person have an easier way around. And in the US, when that happens, a car is going the other way, that car going the other way is like playing chicken. Speeds up, flashes the lights, honk the horn, they go at it. And that doesn't happen in any of the countries that we've been. It's always like, "Oh no, that guy's not going to make it. Let me slow down and let him in." So it's much more courteous. So, think about that. Don't bring that American mentality to these other places that you travel to. So yeah, I think that's the, in a nutshell, the sort of the key things that you want to think about when you drive in a foreign country. Do you have anything to add?
No. You're doing great, Dad.
Marlene hasn't driven too much in Europe yet. I try to get her to do it.
Dan,
every
I
day.
drove it from the ship port to the town, and I picked
The ship port? Okay. That was awesome.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go on to section 7.
You're making me drink, Dan.
Which is access to cash and how we pay for things. Like I mentioned in some of the sections above, We try to pay cash as much as we can, but of course, it's not always easy to get cash, especially when you have a US based bank. And you may not want to get cash because maybe you have a credit card that doesn't charge foreign transaction fee. You want to use that, but often they don't let you use that credit card, or that credit card doesn't work. In Europe, it's tricky. You have to have these newer, like RFID, like contactless cards in most places. But so before we came specifically, we got a card with no foreign transaction fee, and that's contactless. So we've been using the Chase Sapphire card, which has a annual fee, but the first one is waived. And if you use it for a certain amount of time, you get like a big bonus up front for traveling. So that's been great. It's basically a great car for traveling, and that's what we use when we can use it. But otherwise, I think it's always better to pay cash, and it's always better to use local currency. So, for example, the last campground we were at in Berat, Albania, it was 10 euros, right? 10 euros a night. I think it was 10
Yeah.
euros a night. But if we pay local currency, which is the lek, we got a slight discount, like a 10% discount, because their exchange rate was, instead of whatever it was, like, is it, it's like
120?
125 or 127 lek to a euro. Charged me 120 lek to a euro, so I paid 1,200 leks. It's not significant, but it's very convenient. It's easier to get change. They don't have to do like a bunch of math in their head, and you can just you know take your local currency and they can turn around and use it right away. So I always try to use local currency whenever I can, and the plus side is you often save money, and it's accepted everywhere. But often, like if you're near the border, like right here in Albania, we're near Greece, and they can, every pretty much every place here will accept euros because people from Greece come up. It's cheaper here. It's people want to see someplace different, so they come up to Albania, and they every place will take euros. So figure out what currencies are accepted. Some places will even take U.S. dollars, and then let's see. When you use a credit card in ATM, also be careful because just like in the U.S., this is not unique to foreign countries. U.S., you have credit card skimming things that are in like gas pumps or ATM machines. You can't even tell what they look like anymore. You swipe your card in there, and then they're like it clones your card, and then boom, all of a sudden you have a cloned card. You get erroneous charges on your card, and suddenly you're like, okay, so I have to get a new card. Well, that's nice and easy when you have your home address where they're going to send your card to, but it's not quite as easy when you're in a foreign country. You're not going to be back for months, for some people probably more like just a few days or weeks, but it's still inconvenient. Suddenly, that card that you have been planning to using, or plan to be using the whole time that you're there, is kaput. You can't. You have to figure out some other way to access cash. So don't take the risk of using cards in at like swiping machines or ATMs. Make sure you look real carefully. Make sure that there's not like a skimming machine on there. That could really ruin your trip. Um, also like when you're on your phone, when you're accessing your online banking to check your bank accounts, careful when using public Wi-Fi, because a lot of these Wi-Fi hotspots, U.S. included, they're intersecting your passwords and stuff, and they can get into your account and take you for all your money in your account. So be careful with that. And the way to kind of save yourself from doing that is have your own internet connection when you can, instead of using the Wi-Fi hotspot. If you have to use a Wi-Fi hotspot, use a VPN. Use a VPN like private internet access. That's a VPN I've used in the past. NordVPN, that's another one I've used in the past. Those are really great.
I have to go tinkle. I'll be right back.
Okay. Marlene's going to go to our bathroom back there. You
No,
might
I'm
see her head
not.
pop
I'm
up.
going.
Oh,
I'm not. No,
You're not gonna
Dan.
go use the
No, I'm gonna
bathroom?
go outside like a normal person.
Okay. So, but I'll keep going with this. Using so again, use a VPN so that you don't risk having your. I mean that just ruins your day. You don't want that. Um, so I'll tell you the things that I use to access my funds. My bank is based in the U.S. So having a U.S. based bank gets a little tricky too because not everybody will accept a credit card from the U.S. When you try to buy, for example, try to pay for like your cell phone plan, they want a local bank. When we were in Croatia, we got a Croatian cell phone. We couldn't do it. In most countries, they want you to be a citizen or at least have a local bank to do that. So what we do is, like I mentioned earlier, I use the Chase Sapphire card to pay for things. It's designed for travel, so it's great. And for savings, actually for a checkings account, for my ATM card, instead of using my regular Chase ATM, I opened up a Charles Schwab investors checking account. You don't have to invest through Charles Schwab to open this account. This is kind of like their way, their Trojan horse of getting you to invest through them, but you don't have to at all. So what I do is I open up a checking account through them. I got an ATM card, and I just transfer money from my regular account to the Charles Schwab account whenever I withdraw money. And they don't charge a foreign transaction fee, and they also don't charge you if a third party charges you a fee, they will reimburse that fee to you, which has been great. So I can go to any ATM, even if it's one of these ATMs that's like, a third party meant to like make money from these transaction fees. Charles Schwab investor checkings account will reimburse all the fees. So that's been really good. The only downside for that is it takes 4 business days for all your transfers to go through. And it doesn't matter how long you've had the account, it doesn't matter how many times it's gone through from the same bank. It takes 4 business days. So that means if there's a holiday, if there's the weekend, it could be as long. If it's a 3-day weekend holiday, it could take as long as 7 days for a transfer to go in. So you gotta think, with that account, you gotta think a little bit ahead. Another thing that we use is the service called TransferWise. Um, Really interesting service. A little hard to kind of wrap your head around first, but TransferWise is the service that's designed so that you can have like a local bank account, and also get access to local currency by transferring your account from a US one to the UK or the EU, for example. So we opened up a bank account in Croatia so we can pay for our credit card, but we don't have
Or cell phone.
cell phone. We don't have an easy way of transfer money into it. So what we use is we use transfer. We open up an account on TransferWise, and we use TransferWise as like a middleman service. I connect my U.S. bank account to TransferWise, and then we connect our Croatia bank account to TransferWise. Then I can transfer money from U.S. to that, and then from that into Croatia, and that basically bridges the way for us to replenish that account to pay for our Croatian account balance. So that's in a nutshell how we sort of manage our funds and how we get access to our cash in all these different countries.
I'm back for the good stuff.
The
Number
good
8.
stuff. Number 8. I'll tell you what number 8 is. This is when we're more on topic for the kind of thing that we do.
Okay.
Where to find places to camp.
Okay.
So for those of you that have traveled all across the U.S. and even Canada, Mexico, you have your favorite apps and favorite websites. You may belong to, Thousand Trails, or you like to go KOAs or whatever. It's obviously, totally different when you go to Mexico or foreign countries in Europe, but they have their own things, right? So instead of like Good Sand Club, here they have what's called the ACSI. What does that stand for? Do you know?
I have no idea.
It's basically like a campground network. You get discounted camping for off-season specifically. Because on-season camping in a lot of places can be very expensive. It can be like 40, 50 euros a night for not great accommodations. But if you use this card in off-season, I think there's a max of like 10 or 15 euros that they can charge. So that's their equivalent of like a good Sam's Club, ACSI. And as far as apps go, we primarily use this app called Park for Night, the number 4. It's user contributed, so you kind of have to do a little bit more research, read the reviews, and people can upload photos. So it's kind of like, for those of you that have traveled in Mexico, it's like iOverlander. So iOverlander is the common one that we used in Mexico. But Park for Night has pretty much everything. Like, you can have people put stuff like, this is a great museum to visit. This is a parking lot that you can park just for the day, or this is a parking lot that you can pay for overnight, or this is a full-on campground. This place to get propane, stuff like that. Park for Night's really great. There's one that we're going to start using too. I think it's called Camper Contact.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to the forums, you'll see Park for Night, Camper Contact. Like, they're a diehard loyalist to both of these. But I still think, by and large, Park for Night is the most popular. And that's the one that we've used most, except this place that we're at right now was not on Park for Night.
All the ones were a bust.
It was on
because it was off season on Park for Night. So
off season is tough in these parts.
I mean, we're fine parking anywhere, but sometimes when we need a plug or we need a shower and everything's closed off season, it can become rough.
Yeah. So we got here. We did a really long drive to get here from Berat, Albania. We're in this town called Saranda, Albania. This is what I was talking about earlier. You have to kind of drive the long way to get here along the coast, which is a beautiful drive. It just took forever. And then when we got here, the first campground we tried was a bust. And a whole bunch of places we tried, because it was in the dark, we didn't feel comfortable. Then we drove past this hotel, and then we did some research. Marlene's like, oh yeah, that hotel, you can park, they have hookups. You can park at that hotel for 15 euros a night. But it wasn't on Park for Night. But I think it was on Camper Contact, right? But it didn't have a lot of information. Camper Contact wants you to pay, I think, 5 euros a year or something, which is, totally worth it. But now that we're here, I added it onto Park for Night. Now the admin's going to have to approve that, and, we're going to put some photos up there and then talk about our experience and kind of contribute back into the community. So yeah, Park for Night is a great app. Camper Contact we're going to try. The only thing about Park for Night is that it's not the best user interface. It takes a little getting used to, but the data is what you're after, and yeah, you'll figure out how to deal with the user interface.
And it's nice because everybody just writes in different languages, and there's a translate button that you can press.
Yeah,
so
I think that's relatively new, I want to say, because I remember when I first installed it, it didn't have it. But yeah, so, you'll see lots of German, lots of English, lots of French, but you can just translate all the different comments that people write up there. Let's see. When all else fails, parking lots. There's a lot of parking lots, especially in the off season. Off season, it's kind of like for a free for all. Yeah. People won't bother you because so much of Europe is so cold. After a certain time of day, nobody comes outside.
And they don't charge you either. Like, it's
a
lot of places it says parking costs this much, but
not in the off season. It's basically for the summer.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, a lot of parking lots. In fact, a lot of Park for Night places are just parking lots. And then finally, like, private property. Those of you that camp in the U.S., Walmarts and truck stops and Cracker Barrels, they have policy that allow people to park. But here in Europe and even in Mexico, you go to a restaurant, if you are really desperate, you go to a restaurant and then say, hey, can we stay in your parking lot? Especially if you're a paying customer. Can we stay in your parking lot for the night? Most of them are going to say yes. So that's definitely another option. But restaurants are not the kind of place you want to stay multiple nights at.
No.
You just
in a pinch.
Yeah, in a pinch, you can't find a place that's dark, you can do that.
Unless you're just like seafront and nobody around, and then yeah,
Yeah,
we'll stay for a
yeah.
week.
Stay for a couple nights. Stay
We just move in.
stay for a week. So, restaurants and we're at a hotel. Oftentimes you can go to a hotel and just ask them.
And there's a
You
pool
can pay them.
here, so if it was just a little bit warmer,
Yeah, but the pool's
yes,
it's under construction
yeah,
for off season. So again, like off season, even on Park for Night, so many places on Park for Night is seasonal. Like I said earlier, Marlene said earlier in Saranda, every place we went that was supposed to be campgrounds are closed. This is our last option, and it turned out pretty good. We're going to stay 3 nights here. So have multiple options before you arrive. So like we had multiple options, but in fact, all of those were busts, which was a bummer. Okay, so that was that. Let's go to number 9. We're getting close, so we have 12 of these items. Number 9 is electricity, water, and propane. So I think the thing about these vans that people are building, a lot of people are like putting in lithium batteries, like they're taking like Tesla battery packs and putting in like household solar, 800,000 watts of solar on the roof, and just using electricity for everything, which is fine. That's totally fine, but it's very inefficient to use electricity for heat, to use electricity for cooking, to use electricity for heating your water. So we opted to go with propane. Just because we're carrying other stuff on the roof, we have 350 watts of solar, which is plenty for what we do, but it didn't make sense to pack this thing full of electricity and 60 volts of battery packs in the back. So that felt really dangerous. But propane can be tricky, however, to fill in Europe because almost every country has like a different adapter. Maybe not every country. A lot of countries have different adapters. So before we came to Europe, we did some research, and there was this website, and I find it. I'll put it in the description of this video later, or put it in the comments for the podcast post. They sold this like adapter that adapts to everything in Europe. We haven't had to use it yet. At first, we've only gotten propane once, but I think we're running low. We're going to need to use it soon. It comes with like 3 or 4 different brass fittings, and then you can use those brass fittings to adapt pretty much any kind of propane fill place to our US-based propane tank. So that's something you got to think about. If you have propane on board, how are you going to adapt it? So that's propane. Another thing you got to think about is electricity. If you have traveled to Europe, you probably know that their plugs are different. EU has a standard, but then UK has a standard. But not only is the plug different, they are running 220 volts AC versus the US 110, 120 volts. If you look at your plug, usually there's like a label with something printed on there. And it will say something like 110 volts only, or 110 to 240 volts. If it says 110 to 240 or 110 to 220, then it's okay to just use a dummy adapter. It just basically changes the plug to match the plug that you can plug in. But you got to be careful. A lot of the stuff is not designed to be able to use these wide range of voltages. So our battery charger for the camper, for example, only works on 110. So had I just adapted the plug and plugged it in, I would have fried the thing. So what we had to do is we had to buy a EU or UK 220 volt compatible charger to plug it in with. So then what happens is when I have to plug it in to charge the battery when there's no sun or when it's raining, overcast, whatever, I plug that in to charge the battery, and then I run my 110 inverter inside the van and then adapt all my electronics and appliances to run off of a clean, pure sine wave 110. So you want to make sure that you're not just plugging in an adapter to adapt the shape of the plug. You want to make sure that what you're plugging in is not just the plugs are right. Also, it's compatible with the voltage coming out of the wall. That's really important because you don't want to fry something you can't replace, something that you brought from, like blenders. If you plug in, I'm fairly certain that AC motors uh, are not can't take a wide range of AC voltages. So like if you have like a fancy Vitamix blender, you can't plug that into 220 volt. Most computers, most like USB chargers, if you look at the label, they're going to be fine with a dummy adapter, but still, just look at it every time. Test the outlet. This goes with anything 110 or 220. If you can have a way to kind of plug something in that works in that voltage, plug it in to see if it turns on before you plug your whole thing, your whole camper into that plug. So yeah, so the nice thing is that if you know something that's reliable that can be plugged in, use that to charge the known item, which is your camper, and then use your camper's battery system to charge everything else. That way you're protecting all your appliances and gadgets from the actual power source. So that's electricity and propane, but let's talk about water. Make sure the water is potable. Make sure you're not just drinking water out of the spigot. And in Albania, specifically when we came into Durrës and also Tirana, which is the capital, these are the two of the 4 cities that we've been in Albania. We read from somebody that, oh yeah, they have really, really high levels of chlorine in the water, and it wasn't safe to drink. I mean, you can drink it, but it's not great for you for long term. Since we were there for a couple weeks, we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing that. So what we do is we have a like a 5-liter Life Straw. It's called Life Straw is the brand, a filter bag. It has a 0.02 micron filter that filters out a lot of hard minerals and metals and salts. So it filters all that out. And then what we do is we also, while we were there, we boiled it we probably didn't need to because I think the chlorine killed a lot of the stuff. And then we filtered it again with our Brita filter, and that more or less just filters it for taste. But, we did that. The other option would be to just buy water. The downside of buying water is you end up with a lot of these plastic jugs that get thrown away. So that's not ideal. In Mexico,
we set up in Mexico because Mexico has
water vending places
and
where
purification,
yeah,
water buildings.
They sell you bulk water from like a purified,
you can fill
source.
it with a hose directly into our tank.
Right. We couldn't find that here. Preferably, that's what we would have liked to do, but we couldn't find that here. So, we try to limit our use to limit our use of plastic bottles. When we do buy plastic bottles, we try to buy a plastic bottle that we'll reuse for something else, at least for a few times, so we don't just instantly throw it away. So Life Straw filter is what we use, but a lot of people use Berkeys. Berkeys are great water filters, so you can put whatever you want into a Berkey.
It's so big, we don't want to take up that space.
Yeah, exactly. Gray water and black water. So that's another thing that we figured out for us that works. It worked for us in Mexico is to not have, not have to rely on RV infrastructure. Basically, not have onboard waste tanks that we couldn't take to a sink or a toilet and empty.
Right. So not in our truck camper or our little casita trailer. We didn't have tanks.
Right.
And we got used to it, and it's fine.
We got used to it. Yeah, totally. So there are campgrounds here. We don't want to have to rely on that. So we use a cassette toilet. We use 7-gallon water jugs as our water tanks that can pull out and go fill somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so the other thing is with 5 people, our 5-gallon cassette toilet can fill up in a matter of a couple days. If you can't find a place to empty, it could be a problem if you have to go in the middle of the night and you're in like a city in the parking lot and there's lights and people around. But use a pee bottle, pee into a bottle, and then it's a lot more discreet to go dump that bottle somewhere else outside than to go outside and go pee outside. So yeah, that's just, something that you have to do from time to time. Okay, so that's number 9, electricity, water, and propane. Let's see, number 10 is something that we didn't really think too much about before we got here, but laundry and showers. Laundromats are all over the place in the U.S. And even in Mexico, we were able to find laundromats.
Not self-service necessarily,
Yeah,
but they'll wash and fold everything for you for the same price,
right, right.
which we've done before.
Because they just don't have the types of machines that you have in the U.S. that's coin operated.
It was easier in Mexico too because we can hand wash and hand dry.
Yeah, when it's warm, when it's sunny, it's really easy to hand wash, hand dry. But for us, since we've been here, it's been winter. Fall and winter is when we got here, and you can wash something by hand and it won't dry for days. And if you're not staying someplace for a week, like, you're kind of screwed. So some campgrounds may have laundry, but other places, a lot of campgrounds won't even have laundry because they're just kind of for people that stay there for holidays for a few days or a week, and they don't expect people to do laundry there. Because like full-time traveling is not really as popular here in Europe as it is in the U.S. One of the main reasons too, I think, for people that with kids is that homeschooling is not nearly as popular or legal for that matter. So campgrounds definitely have showers. You can have showers there, but not all of them are clean or have great hot water. But few of them have laundry. And laundromats, like I said, are not common. So what we've done to kind of get around that for us is a few times we rented Airbnbs. And we've even rented an Airbnb for one night and didn't even sleep there. We check the boxes when we book it to make sure it has a washer. And sometimes we'll go as far as to asking the owner ahead of time, does it have a washer and does it work?
Right.
And it's a bonus if it has a dryer because so many places in Europe where so many people don't have dryers, they just hang dry. Mm-hmm. We can't rent a place for one night, wash the laundry, and wait for the stuff to dry in one day because it may not. So, we rented a place for $30 and it had a washer and dryer. So we did like 3 or 4 loads. Mm-hmm. And we used their internet while we were there, and we took showers while we were there, and we didn't even sleep there. So that's kind of a way to get around it. You can just camp, wild camp with what they call here, which is boondocking. You can camp for free, and then every 3 or 4 days, like, get a cheap Airbnb. There's 5 of us, but if we're not sleeping there, we can get an Airbnb for like a studio place for 1 or 2 people. Mm-hmm. If we don't have to sleep there, it's totally fine. So yeah, that's how we get by laundry and shower. And we're getting to the final couple items, and we'll do entertainment next. Entertainment, not too different. Basically, what this comes down to is like cell service. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you get internet connection? All the usual ways that you do in the U.S. You get a phone, but the thing is, like, we don't have a way to get a phone plan everywhere. And we don't want to get a phone plan everywhere because we're going to different countries. And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, in the EU, they have now roam-free agreements now. But in Croatia, we got a plan that's unlimited, but it's only unlimited in Croatia. Other EU countries, we don't pay roaming, but we're limited to 10 gigs per device, which is fine. But when you're used to unlimited, 10 gigs goes fast, so you have to really be careful. So then you got to do things that kind of help you, get more with less, which are things like using Wi-Fi hotspots. Also use services that can do offline viewing or offline listening, like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Spotify, Google Music. All these services now will have an offline version where when you have Wi-Fi at a coffee shop or wherever on Airbnb, just download a bunch of stuff and save it on your device. And then when you have limited internet connection, you can watch those shows. You can listen to that music until you get to another place. And some of those things expire after like 7 days or 14 days or whatever, but you don't have to re-download it. You can just log back on, and then they'll just recertify you for however many more days without using hardly any data. So that's the way, using offline capable services to minimize your streaming requirements. And another thing that gets a little tricky is a lot of these services have geographical restrictions, meaning like this service is only available in the United States. This service is only available in North America. and this service is only available in EU countries or certain European countries. So then what we would use, not necessarily part like legitimate based on their terms of service, and they actively try to prevent people from doing this, which is use a VPN, a virtual private network. Essentially, what happens is that you can connect to any internet, and then by using a VPN, it'll route you to a U.S. IP address, and from that U.S. IP address, it'll make the service look like you're from the U.S. But the problem with these services, they're trying to discourage that, and anytime when they come across a new VPN service, they'll figure out the block of IPs that they use, and then they'll block those. So those sometimes work, sometimes don't. But even a lot of places, not just streaming services like video and music, even websites will say, oh, you can't access this information from that country. Like LA Times, for example, like you can't read anything from LA Times outside of the US. So then you log into a VPN and you can read about the article that you see. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it definitely is a good option to try. And when the IP service or when the IP gets blocked, then there's not a whole lot you can do because that means that service provider is actively trying to block people. Um, then there are ways around it. You can use like a personal VPN product. There's a service called Always Home, and what that does is like a dongle that you connect to your device, and then you're routing all your internet service to, if you have internet connection at your house or at your brother's or your parents' house or whatever they have internet service, you can route your internet connection to their IP address. So then it will look like that you're accessing all these services from their place, that internet connection. So then it's very unlikely that you're going to get blocked. It's much better than using these publicly available third-party VPN services. It can be a little tricky to set up. We haven't used one before, but we know people that have, and they have really good experience.
Thanks, Dan.
You don't have anything to say about that?
No, this is all nerdy stuff.
It's pretty nerdy stuff. But okay, so last but not least, we're going to get to the final thing that we do to kind of make all this a little easier. Is we've been asked a lot, how do we get cell phone internet connection? We've mentioned it a few times. We bring our own phones. We get local SIM cards when we can. We got a Croatia plan, which not everybody will be able to take advantage of that option because it's a little trickier to get a bank account. You have to show like an ID card and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we're able to do that. But even without it, you can get tourist SIM cards. All these countries have tourist SIM cards. For example, Montenegro, Albania, we were able to get 10 gigabytes of data on a tourist temporary SIM card for 2 weeks at a time. Actually, you got one that was unlimited from T-Mobile,
Yeah.
Albania or Montenegro,
Mm-hmm.
for like 10 euros or something. But it was only for like 10 days. Usually it's for 2 weeks, and usually it's 10 to 15 euros, and it's usually 10 gigabytes at a time. And I think most of them will let you renew it at least one time. Some will let you renew it multiple times. So it's pretty cheap, for 10 gigabytes. If you can kind of conserve and use other ways to get online, you can make it last quite a long ways. But you've got to make sure that your phone isn't locked by the carrier. In the U.S. now, it's illegal for them to lock, or it's illegal for them to not let you unlock if you own the phone outright. So make sure you own the phone. You're not still making payments on it, and get it unlocked by your carrier. And make sure the frequency that the phone uses is compatible. Most phones are these days, but just in case you have an older phone. And also, in an RV, the real popular thing people do is use a cell phone booster by somebody like WeBoost. Make sure it's legal to use that in the country because every country has different regulations about radio frequency and how much power you can have. So again, roaming, check out what your options are. In Mexico and Canada, we were able to use our T-Mobile plan from the US to travel through Mexico and Canada. That was very easy, but that's a constantly evolving thing.
It got canceled after like 3 months of use.
Right, and we used too much, and now I think they have a limit. It used to be like whatever plan you had in the U.S., you can use it in both of these countries, just like your home.
It was easy.
Yeah, but it's not like that anymore. It's a little harder. Let's see. Roaming, yeah, make sure you're roaming. Like T-Mobile even lets us roam in Europe in a bunch of countries, but it was slow. It was like 2G or 3G. But at the same time, like it was nice when we landed in Denmark, we were able to turn on our T-Mobile phones and it worked right away. And then when we were in Belgium, before we got any like local services, we were able to use our T-Mobile phones, without getting dinged with a heavy roaming charge. But it was limited amount of data that we had. And then as soon as we got to Croatia, we got local numbers. Yeah, so buying a local SIM card is always going to be your best bet. There's also these like you see these on ads on social media about these like, oh, get this Wi-Fi hotspot, use it all over the world for a low rate, and then they'll say that it's cost like 1 penny per megabyte. But if you run the numbers, that's like $10 a gigabyte, which is expensive because we're paying 15 euros for 10 gigabytes, which is at a fraction of that cost. So these things, one of them is called Surf Roam, and I think there's a few other ones. Those are great if you're just occasionally going out of the country, because I think some of these are like you pay by the day. You can pay for 3 days, and then when you're not using it, you don't pay for it. That's great for short-term travel. It's convenient. You don't have to pop SIM cards in and out. They use what's called virtual SIMs, but they're expensive. Like I said, you're always better off getting a local SIM card, even if it's a temporary 14-day local SIM. And then, coffee shops, restaurants, hotel, and campground Wi-Fi. In fact, one of the reasons why we stayed a third day here is because they had great Wi-Fi here. Until like 30 minutes before this YouTube live stream, it went down. And it was great for 2.5 days. But, that goes to show you how you can't rely on just one. Like I said, two is one is none. Marlene, you're going to remember
I never
that
heard you say this before. That's why it's funny.
Well, it's not that funny. So anyways, that is our sort of 12 items of how to survive, how to make your life easier traveling in foreign countries the way we do.
Great outline, Dan.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is probably a much longer episode of a podcast than some of the other ones, but I think there's a lot of information packed in here, and hopefully you guys will be able to use it. And since we're doing also a live stream, we can sort of cut this podcast off, and then we can continue the live stream and maybe answer some of these questions that people have had. And I don't know how many people came on and went off. The number watching have been fluctuating. But let's close this podcast. I want to thank you guys for listening to this podcast. We're going to continue on a little bit longer in the live stream. Oh, I'm alive. We're going to continue on a little bit longer in the live stream. But, if you guys are not subscribed to our podcast is at mollymish.com/podcast. And we would love to have you guys, give us a listen there. We have 10 episodes now. And if you guys are on iTunes, you have an Apple account, we would love it if you guys go to our iTunes page and give us a 5-star review. That would be really awesome.
And a comment would be awesome too.
And a comment would be awesome.
5 stars is the minimum.
5 stars and a comment. That's not too much to ask, right? So yeah, thank you guys for listening to the podcast, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks for listening.
Okay, so that was the podcast portion. And let's see, we have some questions here that on the live stream that we want to kind of check out. Okay.
Should we start from the top or start from the bottom?
Yeah, I'm going to go to live chat. Let's scroll up a little bit. Okay. John Andrews, I don't know if he's still on. Is it hard for you to work remote work overseas? It's a little bit trickier. You know, it's mostly because it's like the time zone difference, and also like you know our we're still transitioning into this new camper, and there's not a real good dedicated spot yet for this work situation. We have this desk set up. You see that this current live stream situation we have, it takes some time to configure it, and then we can't leave it like this, because then we lose access to things. So it's a little trickier, but as long as we have internet, as long as I can have a way to plug in my computer, and also my computer's kind of dying, so I'm in the process of trying to get a new computer, but it's way cheaper to buy a computer in the U.S. than it is to buy in Albania or Croatia or Montenegro, or even like Germany and UK and these more wealthier like Western countries. But our friends are flying in from California to France uh, for spring break, and I've got a few items shipped over to them, and they're gonna help me bring it in. So that's gonna help, and it's gonna basically my battery is dying, so I have to be plugged in. And because it's overcast and raining a lot, we're not getting as much solar charge as we like to be able to just plug my computer in and run it all the time. Yeah, so that's tough. So Bent Cranks TV asked, did we like Twillingate? Remember Twillingate?
No.
Twillingate was that little island. I think it was an island in Newfoundland where we like had like this really great camping spot where it was like you're kind of up on a hill, but the hill looked kind of like it was like tiered.
It's like the Meat Campground or something? Meat Cove?
Not Meat Cove. No.
Hmm.
Twillingate was beautiful. Twillingate is one of the places where you can see like icebergs float down. But yeah, we really love Twillingate. I don't know if Bent Cranks is on anymore, but he did ask about that. What is it like with trailers? Yeah, trailers from Eric Raspberry. Trailers is going to be tricky. The roads are much smaller. In fact, we are probably in the biggest thing that we feel comfortable driving around here.
Yeah, nothing bigger.
Nothing bigger. Definitely nothing with trailers. We met a family from the Czech Republic, and they've been traveling in Europe basically part-time. They have a home base in Czech Republic, but he works remotely, so he travels a lot. He just downsized. He got rid of his trailer. Now he's in a van now too. So yeah, it's tough. I don't know what the difference is going through borders, but definitely trailers you'll have a harder time here. Oh, let's see.
Oh, are we headed to Greece? Do I need my microphone? Do you need to talk to your microphone anymore?
Well, I'm talking to the microphone anyway because I'm still recording it.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are headed to Greece. We're headed to Greece tomorrow. And oh yeah, so hit the like button if you guys are still on. We love having likes, and every now and then we get a unlike, but such is life. But don't hit that. Stay away from that unlike. Yeah, so a lot of the stuff is just stuff. Oh, I didn't know Coco was from Oaxaca. Did we? Maybe we did.
Maybe.
I think maybe we did. Yeah, so Sharon, good point. You can call your credit card and bank to tell them that you're traveling so they don't flag you. The nice thing about the Chase Sapphire card is that I didn't have to do that. They have really good algorithms, maybe. But then, like, even when you call them, it's like they can only do it for a certain amount of time. Then you have to redo it. Yeah, so Pope Hannah says, they must notice your license plate too over here. They do, or I think they do. We definitely get a lot of looks, even though we're in a Sprinter van, which is everywhere. Mm-hmm. I feel like every time we drive someplace, people are turning their head as we're driving by.
A lot of villages. I think it's just like, who are you and why are you in our village?
Okay, that's true.
Like people do that in like my dad's village.
We drive through a lot of small villages. Yeah, let's see. American Express mostly accepting you. Sure. I mean, I would say like Visa, MasterCard also accepted in a lot of places. We use our credit card plenty in Croatia. and part of Montenegro too, like buying groceries and stuff. But Albania, I think every restaurant that we've been to have not accepted credit cards.
It's not a thing here.
Yeah. Yeah, Gatorade, like wide mouth bottles for pee bottle, definitely the key. Um, let's see.
If somebody wants to send us Busy Bee sandwiches.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Doubles.
That's right. That's Big Duke X.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, Busy Bee sandwiches. That, you know what, Big Duke X. I was just thinking about your comment the other day. As much as it isn't necessarily a thing that I craved when I was there, but I would kill for a fantastic cafe breakfast burrito right now.
Or just any refried bean.
Any kind of good breakfast burrito.
We have a visitor. Can you say hello?
Hi.
It's Luca. What do you have to say, Luca?
My cat doing dragging.
He does. What are you guys doing back there? Playing games?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
You're very talkative and very loud, and now you're the opposite.
I know. Do you see you? You see yourself on here?
Yeah, I don't know what to do.
Say hi. Say hi.
Hi.
Hi, gamers.
Oh yeah, we didn't mention healthcare. Well, I think that's mostly because we are on like a what is it called? That
Like a
thing
co-op.
a co-op healthcare. I'm not exactly sure how well that works, so we haven't had to use it. It's basically for like catastrophic stuff. So it gets a little bit trickier when you have, just serious problems. But day-to-day healthcare, at least in Europe anyways, or at least in Croatia anyways, it's pretty easy to just pay out of pocket.
Like I did my annual exam in Croatia, and it was about $100 for a blood test and the whole exam. There was healthcare I could have signed up for, but
yeah. Yeah, we haven't totally figured out like a really good healthcare plan, and maybe that's part of the reason why we didn't really mention it. And we'll revisit the whole healthcare thing once we have a better picture of exactly what the best way. I don't want to give recommendations that are not ideal, which is the same reason why we didn't want to do like our feelings of Albania, even though right now it's awesome, totally positive, but. There may be something that happens tomorrow. Hopefully not, but we're still in here. We're still in this country for another 12 hours or so. So.
And somebody asked how they can help donate money. We're on Patreon.
Yeah, we're on Patreon.
Luca just sent
Patreon.com/MollyMish.
One of the things we do is we send postcards. And did you remember writing postcards to people? You drew them pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're Patreon members, you might have a postcard from Luca coming.
Yep.
Or Ava or Mila.
I might have overwrited my name on one.
Yeah, you may have written it over to the address part.
Mm-hmm.
You might have drawn yourself farting too.
I'm going. Bye.
You're not going.
I'm going in the back.
Okay, go in the back.
Say bye.
Yeah, those are postcards from Montenegro and Croatia. And we just sent them last week. Oh, Sharon, you can send us private. Do we have our address?
I don't know. We can send you some. Send us your address.
Send us your address in a direct message, and then we'll send you a postcard. We'll have Luca write it. So yeah, that's it. I think we've answered all the questions. Do you guys have any other questions about anything really? Because now we're not.
Matter.
It doesn't have to be specific to our podcast. It could be anything. We're still on here.
And if you're still watching, Angela.
Was she watching?
She sent a heart.
Oh. Wait, I have a beer here that I didn't open yet. Yeah, this is Albanian beer. Bira Tirana. And guess where they make this? Huh? In Tirana. 4% alcohol.
Can't read anything.
Half liter. Can't read anything. But you know, like, all these countries have these light beers that are all pretty much the same. Croatia, Montenegro, Albania. And this one's super cheap. This is, I can get this for like, some places like 70 lex, which is 60 cents for a half liter bottle. So, I mean, you can easily become an alcoholic. But maybe not cheap for the locals, right? Because they don't, Albania is consistently one of the poorest countries in the EU. So, anyways, well, I think that's it. You know, I want to thank you guys for watching this live stream. It's going on really, really long. But I think right in the middle there's some good information for you guys. And I will go in there and kind of figure out where the sections start and then put little markers in there. So if you ever need to jump back in and listen to another section, I'll be able to show you one of the 12 sections where it starts and where it ends. Oh, Coco wants to know, are the kids learning Croatian? Well, you can say that. Like, Marlene started out talking to the girls only in Croatian when they were born.
Right, so Ava especially, she was about 50-50 English and Croatian. And as I had the next kid, it got harder for me to manage speaking quickly enough to say what I wanted. You know?
And also, it was trickier because the older one wanted to speak English, and then the younger one you're trying to speak Croatian to, and then it's
a lot of work. And especially since I speak, my second language is Croatian, Dan's is Chinese, and we're not speaking those secondary languages to
we don't
each
have
other.
A common language that's not English.
Right. So it's a little bit harder.
Yeah. But it helps me, though, because I've been trying to learn Croatian, so even though I can't really speak it, I can understand a lot now.
You can.
So.
And the kids are picking up a lot of vocabulary words when we were there. Especially related to animals and feeding them and asking them to come here or go there. Or...
Yeah. Greece is going to be tricky. Greece is, you know, they use the Greek alphabet, and we don't know anything about Greek. We don't speak Greek because it's all Greek to me. Dudunch. No?
No.
But I expect most people to speak pretty good, pretty decent English, especially in shops and restaurants. So yeah, that's that's next. But what I heard that the tricky part about Greece is reading the signs, because you don't, unless you figure out what letter is what, like how it goes between the Greek to the Latin alphabet, it's tricky to just even like read the signs.
Yeah.
Because all the Greek names will have Latinized versions of it too that you can kind of write and spell, but you know, we don't know what they are. But we'll be there long enough. We're going there for the next couple of weeks, or at least 1 week, and hopefully we're going to go into Turkey and spend a few weeks in Turkey. Really excited about Turkey. Turkey is going to be super awesome. It's going to come with its own set of challenges, but Greece is a place that we'll come back to because, like I said, our friends are coming to France to meet us at the end of March, beginning of April. So we're going to fly there. We're going to fly out of Athens and go hang out with them in Paris for a couple weeks. And then we'll come back at the end of the first week of April and spend pretty much all of April. We're going to go to the Greek islands. We're going to go to some. It'll be in April, though, which will probably be better because it'll be warmer. We'll hate to do some island hopping in this kind of cold weather. But we'll spend time, we'll spend this next month or so going to Turkey and really looking to checking out Istanbul. Such a unique place. It's the only city that I know of that's half in Europe, half in Asia. You know, it's literally on two separate continents. And I really want to go to Cappadocia, which is kind of a touristy thing to say, because you just see all the pictures. But I know that driving to Cappadocia, it's kind of a long drive. We'll see cool things along the way. And once we get that far east, that's probably as far east as we'll go. And from there, we may. Right now, the plan is kind of go down into the coast, maybe the southern and the western coast of Turkey, and then from there you can hop on a ferry to the Greek islands, and then from there you can go to a few islands, and then end up back in Athens instead of driving all the way back from the top. So that's the plan. That's kind of the rough plan. Coco wants to know vlog on some homeschooling. Yeah, so we did a podcast on homeschooling, did we?
We did.
But we haven't vlogged any
Maybe we'll do a
show.
day in the life of like a few days of homeschooling and kind of take videos of exactly what the kids do.
We can definitely do that. However, often in homeschooling, there's difficulties.
Well, yeah, everybody's trying to concentrate, and the last thing I think about is let me video this. So maybe if we're in a nice,
We would do our best, Coco. We would do our best.
We'll do that in a nice location.
Yeah, Turkey and Greece are really close, Sharon. Turkey, in fact, some Greek islands, some islands that are part of Greece, is like a stone's throw from Turkey. And by all accounts, it should have belonged to Turkey, but Greece is like a really greedy, like island hogging country. In fact, there's an island right out here called Corfu, right outside of the town that we're in. It looks like there should be a bridge that drives out there, but it's not Albania. It's Turkey. I mean, not Turkey. It's Greece. Yeah, all the islands around Greece. Doesn't matter how close they are to another country. It's Greece, Turkey, Albania, Macedonia.
Like Croatia has all those islands too.
Yeah, but the closest country to those islands is actually Croatia. But a lot of these islands, the closest country to them is Turkey. So, anyways, yeah, it's convenient to take a ferry, and I think it's, I don't know what the price is, but we took a lot of ferries in Croatia too, from one place to another. It's cheaper when you just take it without a car, but a little bit more expensive with a car. But oftentimes, because of the fuel prices and how long it takes to drive from one place to another, it still might be worth it to take a ferry. So, and also that way we don't have to drive, we don't have to circle back through the same road. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's kind of our plan for the next. I think that takes us all the way to the end of April, basically. And then from that point on, we'll go north into. Start making our way up towards Scandinavia.
Yeah, for the summer.
Which will be really exciting. And it's going to be warmer. Looking forward to having warmer weather. So, anyways, I think we've, again, babbled on long enough.
We got to shut it down.
We're going to shut it down?
Mm-hmm. We got an emergency.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys for joining us in the live stream. Sorry about the technical difficulties at the beginning. And we appreciate everybody for being on this live stream with us, especially all of you that were on here for this entire time, almost 2 hours worth. So,
okay.
Thank you, and
thanks for watching.
We will see you guys in the next video. What about Mila? Mila's going to say bye? She's sleeping?
Bye. She's lazy.
She's lazy. Okay. Bye.